Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. Oh yeah! Today I am covering such a highly requested case and I cannot believe it's taken me this long to get around to it. But wow, life is life and life is busy. But today we are finally covering the Port Arthur Massacre, and this was committed by none other than Martin Bryant. Scumbag. I knew about this case, I knew the horrific massacre that he committed. I had no idea of the dodgy things that happened in his life whilst he grew up. People died around him, and I'm not convinced that it was their own doing. I truly believe that Martin Bryant has murdered many more people than we even know. In case you're not aware, very brief description, Martin Bryant, he was just like troubled from the get-go. Like, he was trouble. He was trouble. That's all I can really say. He was trouble. And as he grew up through life, he would take advantage of people. He would do things to get money off of people, and he just really used them for his own benefit. And when he had enough of that person, they coincidentally seemed to pass away or get in freak accidents. Yeah, Martin Bryant was a known weirdo to his family, to school teachers, to pupils, to doctors, psychiatrists, whoever you can imagine. He was known as being weird. He tortured animals, he shot everyone's parrot in their neighbourhood. No one wanted to be around him, but he felt that people should want to be around him. And one day, when he felt like he wasn't getting noticed enough, he decided that he was going to commit the most heinous act so he would be remembered forever. And this is when he decided to walk into the Port Arthur site and massacre 35 innocent people. Before we get into today's case, if you are new here, hi, my name is Anna. I am a certified yapper. Came on the internet one day, talked about true crime, yapped on, found a community of people like myself who's interested in the same things. So if true crime's your jam, I suggest you subscribe. Get the notification bell on, because I am here for you twice a week, every single week. The schedule has been a bit different because I'm currently moving house, but come Sunday, it's all back to normal. Twice a week, every week, Wednesday, Sunday. And if you're a regular here, then you know the drill. Please make sure you leave a like and a comment. Share if you could, even just share my name out into the World Wide Web, that would be great. Help people find my channel. All the important details that you might need, products, links, etc. is all linked down below. So without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the horrific case of Martin Bryant and the Port Arthur Massacre. It's actually so funny, but see, if I don't post my regular like twice a week, I feel like I've been gone forever. And I realise most creators post once a week, and I'm still posting once a week, but it does not feel like enough. I need my 2 posts a week. So we're back. This might go up on Thursday though, depending on how well I can get this edited, because I'm having to film it a bit later because I've been a bit under the weather, so my throat is still a bit groggy. Sorry about that. You're probably going to hear it in this video. I will try and clear my throat as much as I can. But Martin Bryant, damn. I knew about this case, but I didn't know like the in and outs of the case like before the Port Arthur Massacre. And when I learned that, holy crap, evil Knievel. Terrible human being. Now at the moment I've not got any Christmas decorations up because, you know, if you don't know, I'm currently moving house, we're painting, we're renovating, so I think the Christmas decorations might need to wait until we're in the house, or I might put up like a few bits but not too much because it'll be like a nightmare to move. But if you can see, you know, white paint on my face, my hands, my neck, anywhere, my hair, I've been painting a lot until the late hours, so please excuse that. So Martin Bryant, with the luscious locks, by the way, gorgeous hair. He was born on May the 7th of 1967, and he was born at the Queen Alexandra Hospital in Hobart of Tasmania. Now Martin, he was the first child born to Maurice and Carleen Bryant. Now their family home was located in Lena Valley, but Martin himself, he would spend a lot of time at their beach home in Carnarvon Bay? What? Carnarvon Bay? That one. And listen, as it always goes, actually not always, but in this case we're off to quite a normal start. Things aren't that alarming, but things would change very, very quickly because Martin Bryant was your typical weirdo. And I don't just mean someone who's a bit weird, like, you know, we're all a bit weird. He was a weirdo. A neighbour of his would recall that during Martin Bryant's like childhood and his adolescence, one day he went out into the neighbourhood and shot every single neighbourhood parrot that he could possibly see. Not only that, but dead animals were constantly turning up on the land around his home. Dead animal, like different kinds of animals. I'm not just meaning like pigeons and crows. We're talking like cats, dogs, rabbits, like pets. The actual household pets were turning up dead. Martin's own mother, she would describe him as a very different and annoying child. And like, this sounds harsh, right? But she was onto something. She was onto something so quick because he is very different and extremely annoying. But she would say like if she bought him new toys or if family members bought him new toys or bought his siblings new toys, they would be found broken. Martin wouldn't really play with them. He would break them. That was his version of playing, and then he'd just leave them lying around the house. And like, fair enough, some of the toys were old, but most of them were new. And listen, his mum and family, friends, neighbours, doctors go on to say some really harsh things about him. And at first I was like, oh geez, like how can you talk about your child like that? That is so harsh. But then as I delved further into this case, I was like, oh geez, they weren't harsh enough because this boy was freak of the week. And listen, it doesn't stop at, you know, killing animals or trying to kill animals or breaking new toys or breaking your siblings' toys and making them upset. Oh no, it'll dive deeper than that. And speaking of diving, one time Martin was out like diving, like snorkeling with one of his friends. Now this friend was a young boy at the time, as was Martin. Martin leaned over, grabbed his friend's snorkel off his face and left his friend like flailing around in the water struggling to breathe because he had literally took away his breathing apparatus. And then on another occasion he was seen like randomly chopping down neighbours' trees. Like, excuse me lumberjack, but I never ordered a tree removal in my garden, put it back. But like, he would just be caught doing the most random and weird stuff. I mean, obviously the snorkel thing, kind of attempted murder, but other than that, just the weirdest, most random stuff that was like, what the fuck? Like, why are you doing that? This might come as a shock to some of you, but within school, Martin Bryant, he was a very disruptive and violent pupil to teachers, to students. However, it was said that he was also the subject of some severe bullying. Other children in his class and classes above and below him, they would bully him quite severely because he was so strange and different. And I'm sure we can all imagine, or some of us might know, the psychological impact that bullying has on someone. It's one of the hardest things that people can go through. Like, just don't bully, don't be nasty, don't be a POS, because if you have nothing nice to say, just don't say it. Like, why are you out there trying to ruin people's days? Teachers, when they were asked about Brian, or, you know, when they were writing out report cards on him, they would say that he was very distant from reality. Like, he was in his own wee world. He was a complete space cadet. But not only that, he would never really express, who do I think I am? Sean Connery? He wouldn't really express any emotions. He kept it all to himself, or he didn't feel them at all. Who's to say? Now, his behaviour was declining so badly at school that he would be suspended from Newtown Primary School in 1977. Now, once he was suspended, he received multiple psychological assessments to, you know, see what's going on up there. And during these psychological assessments would be when Martin Bryant, he admitted that he enjoyed torturing animals. So, like, let's lock him up. You know, danger to society. That's only going to progress. We've seen it 1,000 times. They should know it by now. Like, serial killer in the making. So the following year, the school, they allow him to come back under the conditions that his behaviour has improved and he isn't violent and disruptive. So he comes back, and at first everything's kind of, sunshine and roses. His behaviour seems to have improved quite a lot. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than what it was. And then once he's got his foot back in the door and, his chair seat's warm again, he starts to misbehave, and it gets a lot worse than it was before. And immediately he starts bullying children who were a lot younger than him and a lot shorter than him as well. Pick on someone your own size, but he wouldn't. He wanted to go for the shorter, smaller, younger statures. And he was basically torturing them mentally at school every single day. And listen, I get the fact that he was bullied and sometimes hurt people, but no, I'm sorry, I don't give that as an excuse, because you get a lot of hurt people who go through life ensuring that they don't hurt others because they know how it feels. So then 1980 rolls around and the school's like, this boy, he needs a specialised unit who can really help him and, get his behaviour under control, try and see him on the right path. So he would be transferred to a special education unit at the Newtown High School. And unfortunately, it would be here when his behaviour would deteriorate and his academics would also deteriorate. He had no desire to do well, this guy. He was quite happy just, going through life, shooting parrots, killing poor defenceless animals and a whole lot else. Martin Bryant's behaviour as an adolescent was incredibly disturbed. People just knew that he was a sandwich short of a picnic, screw loose, a shed missing a door. There was just something not quite right there. But they did also understand that along with this really disturbed behaviour, there may have been a possibility of an intellectual disability. Not only is he struggling with his behaviour, but if he's also got this mental disability, surely that comes into play as well. Martin, he goes on, he leaves school in 1983 and then he gets assessed for disability pension. Now the assessor, they describe him and they say he is unable to read or write, he does a bit of gardening and watches TV, only his parents' efforts prevent further deterioration, could be schizophrenic, and his parents face a bleak future with him. It's harsh. It's so harsh, but it's also very, very correct. And, we're getting there. Also today, I want to do a frosty makeup. And I mean, I want to do a white eye. I've seen it on TikTok, Pinterest, things like that. The goal for this makeup is I want to look like I've been out in the snow for a week. My cheeks are cold, so they're rosy. And then, my eyes are, frosted, iced, That's the vibe. So Martin, he goes on to get a job as a handyman, and not only that, but he would also get a job as a gardener. Now, this didn't affect his disability pension, he was still very much entitled to that, so he was still receiving payments, and he kind of felt why am I working? If I'm receiving this, I don't need to work and I don't want to work. Now later, Martin, he would be assessed and they would test his IQ, which gave him an IQ result of 66, which is equivalent to that of an 11-year-old. And with this, he was deemed to be, borderline mentally disabled. Listen, this is where things just go downhill. They get dodgy real quick and there's no coming back from it. So in early 1987, Martin Bryant, he was now 19 years old when he would meet and befriend a 54-year-old woman. Now, this woman was Helen Mary Elizabeth Harvey, and she was the heiress to the Tattersall's lottery fortune. And in case you're not aware, because I wasn't, this is an Australian gambling company, and she was an heiress to a share of this. Big bucks, right? A lot of money going on there. And Martin and Helen, they had met whilst Martin was looking for potential customers for his lawn mowing business. And, they developed a friendship quite quick. Now, Helen, she is 54 and she lives with her elderly mother by the name of Hilza Harvey. Now, Hilza didn't keep too well, so Helen, she was always over looking after her mum. Now, somehow Martin works his way into the family fold, like he's one of us, And he starts to become a very regular visitor to the mansion in Newtown. So he comes over and he would feed the 14 dogs that live in the house. And not only that, but he would also feed the 40 cats, 40 felines that lived in the garage. And like, listen, I'm a cat person. We all know this. Cats, my jam, love and adore them. But 40 cats? I don't know if I've got that in me. Like during the night, could you imagine the chaos? I don't know. So time goes on, and then in June of 1990, an unidentified person makes a phone call to the health authorities, and this is basically a report on Helen. So the health authorities, they decide to go over and check on Helen, and this is where they find Helen and Hilza in urgent need of medical attention. Who was this unidentified person? I don't know, but I'm going to assume it was Martin Bryant. So they're receiving medical attention, and it is determined that Helen herself, she is suffering from infected ulcers, and Hilza, she has a fractured hip. So they both, are in recovery, trying to get past their illnesses and ailments, and, the hip fracture, Jesus, that must hurt. But it was ultimately determined that because Helen was in no fit state herself, she wouldn't be able to care for Hilza anymore. So Hilza, she would be moved into like a nursing home, a care home, to be looked after. And sadly, just weeks later, she would pass away at the age of 79, leaving Helen all by herself. Apart from, she wouldn't be by herself, because Martin Bryant he'd be sticking around like glue. Because this Newtown mansion was, pretty old and decaying before their very eyes, a mandatory clean-up order was put in place over the mansion. Now, Martin Bryant, he told his father this, and his father ended up taking long service leave to help clean up the interior of the mansion, which, such a nice guy for doing that. Like, that's pretty incredible, because it did seem like it was going to be quite a big job, and he was more than willing to take it on and help out. And because of the conditions and because the owner had passed away, the RSPCA, they had come over and they confiscated most of the animals who lived in the house, which honestly, thank goodness, because could you imagine if those animals were left there with wee torturesome Martin Bryant? That would not go down very well. So I'm sort of glad about that. So after this mandatory clean-up order was complete, Helen was feeling really lonely, and she invited over Martin Bryant to live with her in this mansion. And sounds a bit weird, the age difference, bit creepy, but I think she was genuinely just this nicer, older lady who really found a friendship with Martin. It was nothing dodgy going on, it was just friends. Now listen, before Helen could even get out the words, "Will you move in with me?" Martin Bryant, he had unpacked. He was in that mansion and he was ready to stay. Anything that meant like a free ride in a fancy car, he was going to grab. Anything that was for free, anywhere there was money, he was going to jump right in there. And they would spend a lot of money. And believe me, there was money upon money upon money. They had more money than sense at this point, and they start burning through it like wildfire. And in less than just 3 years, Helen and Martin, they had purchased 30 brand new cars. Expensive cars, nice cars, make your neighbour jealous type of cars. 30. 2 people, 3 years, 30 cars. Unless you can split yourself into quarters and drive them. I don't know who needs that many cars, but what a way to show that you've got money. So around this time, Martin, he is due his reassessment for his disability pension, and on the paperwork there was a note that stated the following: "Father protects him from any occasion which might upset him as he continually threatens violence. Martin tells me that he would like to go around shooting people. It would be unsafe to allow Martin out of his parents' control." He would like to go around shooting people. Right. And what are we doing about that? What are we going to do to make sure that doesn't happen? apparently no match. 1991 comes around and Helen and Martin, they're thinking like, you know, it's a real shame that we're not allowed animals in here anymore. Like, how good would it be to have property where you could have animals? Or, you know, property that's dedicated to animals. Helen and Martin, they proceed to buy a 72-acre farm in Copping, which is like this small township. But this farm's just for them two, and a couple of pets if they fancy it. Again, spending money like there's no tomorrow. Like, are you scared that you're going to lose that money in a day? I don't know. I know I look a bit strange right now. It's given the Snow Queen out in Narnia, but I hope, it's all going to go good once everything's on. So like, you just need to bear with me looking crazy right now, because hopefully it's all going to look good in the end. I hope. Now, neighbours around the farm, they immediately start to notice some really alarming behaviour from Martin Bryant. And they would notice that he would walk around the farm carrying an air gun, and any time any like tourists or passerbys would... Passerbyers? We've had this debate before. What's passerbys? Passerbyers. People passing by, okay? People passing by. He would fire the gun at them whenever they would stop to buy apples on the stall across from the farm. And not only that, but he would roam around the surrounding properties and fire this gun at any dogs that barked at him. Bearing in mind the reason that the dogs are barking is because he's on their property, but he still like, why are you patrolling the grounds of my farm? Go back to your own farm and don't fire at my dog, because my dog is protecting me from you. Martin Bryant, right, he's walking around firing at everyone's dogs who bark at him on their property. But not only was he doing this, but whilst he's like roaming the properties, he's trying to befriend the neighbours. As if they're going to want to be friends with someone who just shot at their dog and, you know, was roaming their property unwarranted. And listen, these neighbours, they wanted absolutely hee-haw, that is a Scottish word for nothing, hee-haw to do with him. Like, they did not want to know him. Like, they seen this creep coming, they ran home, they shut their doors, locked their doors, closed their windows, pulled their curtains, and pretended no one was home. They didn't want to talk to this guy, right? And like, if he's coming over that hill, you best believe people are hiding. Now, I know you might be thinking, oh, you know, Helen and Martin, what a beautiful friendship they've got. Like, despite the age difference, they're really there for each other. They really get along. They love spending time together. But not everything was sunshines and rainbows and peaches and apples between Helen and Martin. Oh no. You see, whenever Helen was out driving and Martin was in the passenger seat, he would try to grab the steering wheel and veer them off the road. I'm not trying to say that he's out here trying to kill Helen, but, you know, if the steering wheel fits, then yeah. Literally, anytime Helen and Martin are out driving, he would grab that steering wheel and he would just go ham. He's like swiggling them all over the road, across the road, trying to land them in ditches, trying to get that car flipped. And he would especially do this whilst they were driving at a high speed on like a highway, or we would call it a motorway. But it's just like crazy. Like, he's endangering himself as well, which is the weird part. Now, things were so severe between the pair in these like life-threatening drives that they would go on. Helen once said to a neighbour, one of these days that little is going to end up killing me. Doesn't really sound like the perfect friendship we thought it might be, you know? It's sounding deadly. Helen even said that anytime Martin was in the car with her, Martin would try and like force her and get her to drive a lot faster than what she needed to. And Helen outright refused, because she's like, I know your plans. I know you're trying to get me off this road to kill me. Helen's literally over here driving like Miss Daisy, like 10 miles per hour, because she's in fear for her life, and rightly so, but there's 30 cars, so why is Martin in this one? So then, on October the 20th of 1992, Helen Harvey, who was just 59 years old, alongside two of her dogs, would die. You might be wondering, how did they die? Like, was it some kind of freak accident? No really. They would die when Helen Harvey's car veered onto the wrong side of the road and crashed directly into oncoming traffic. Now, guess who else was in this car with her? riding Han Solo in the passenger seat? Martin Bryant. But he was fine. Well, I mean, he's not fine because he actually is in hospital for quite a while, but like, he survives. But Helen and 2 of her beautiful little dogs, they would die. I've seen a lot of people who say, like, there's no way he deliberately did this. There's no way he risked his life like that. And at first I was like, do you know what? It's actually kind of crazy. Like, who the hell would do that? But if we expand wider and we look at the bigger picture, Martin Bryant could be the kind of person to put himself in a life-threatening position if the possibilities were very lucrative if he came out the other end, which he did. And listen, yes, okay, Martin Bryant didn't get off scot-free. He would be in the hospital for 7 months with severe back and neck injuries. But like I said, you know, he would survive and come out the other end and everything would be great. And like, I'm sure that Martin Bryant was fine being in this accident and having these injuries when he could literally wipe his tears away with thousands of dollar bills. That's right, he is going to inherit a big, big sum. Because somehow, over the years that they were friends, Martin Bryant had somehow wormed his way into being the sole beneficiary of Helen's estate. And he would come into possessions and assets that would total 550,000 Australian dollars. What? Yeah. And like, he was briefly investigated. Police knew that he had this habit of, you know, grabbing the steering wheel and trying to veer across the road. And they were sus, because they were like, surely this was him. Especially when the money exchanged hands, it was all kind of making sense. They had no proof to say that Martin had done this. So he, you know, scoops up the money under his oakster and off he goes to live a happy life. Now, as you are probably aware, or, you know, as you can imagine, Martin Bryant, he had no idea about money. He had no idea how to manage it, you know, should he invest it, how to spend it wisely, and how to make sure it lasted him. And his mother was so concerned that she wound up getting a guardianship order in place, and this meant that his assets would be placed under the management of public trustees. Now, the reason that this had been granted was due to the evidence of Martin's diminished intellectual ability. So then, after Helen's tragic death, you know, that accidental death, Martin Bryant's father, Maurice, he decided that he would help look after Coppin Farm. Now, he's now 60 years old, but he's willing to take on the management of the farm just to make sure it's maintained in the way that Helen would want. Now, Martin Bryant, at this point, he's spending more time around his family because he has to recuperate from his injuries. It's worth noting that around this time, Maurice Bryant, he had, you know, thought about a few business plans. There was a couple of things that he wanted to take on, but ultimately those plans had fallen through, and this was determined to be the reason eventually that Maurice Bryant would be prescribed antidepressants. Now, around this time that he was prescribed the antidepressants, he had also moved the joint account solely into his wife's name and also the utilities. On August the 14th of 1993, Maurice, he had a visitor coming over. Now, this was a planned visit. Maurice knew this visitor was on their way. However, when this visitor arrived, they would find a note pinned to the door saying, "Call the police." Along with this note pinned to the door, there was also several thousands of dollars in his car, just, you know, sitting there for everyone to see. So the police, they come in and they're searching around, but there is absolutely no sign of Maurice. So they're wondering, you know, where is he when? Or, you know, should we be looking further? And this is when they decided to bring in like a dive team, and they were going to search the 4 dams surrounding the farm. And then devastatingly, on August the 16th, 2 days later, Maurice's body would be found in the dam closest to the farm, and he had a weighted scuba belt tied around his neck, so he had drowned. And the question was, had he drowned himself, or had someone else drowned him? Over this 2-day period, when the police were searching for Maurice, Martin Bryant, he was walking around with the police, laughing and joking, you know, about his dad's disappearance, about this, that, and the next thing. He just didn't seem too concerned or bothered that his dad was missing. The police, they consider that his death is obviously unnatural causes and it was ruled as a suicide. But I want to know what you think, because like, part of me believes it could have been Martin Bryant who had done this, but I also think it could possibly be a suicide because he had transferred the joint account solely into his wife's name alongside the utilities. There was thousands of dollars in his car. He was prescribed antidepressants, so it could be a suicide, but then it could also be the perfect murder. You know, I don't know, but it's like, how would Martin get the assets and how would Martin get the joint account transferred? Or did his dad do this anyway, but not for that reason, and Martin was like, oh, perfect setup, perfect opportunity? I don't know. But regardless of this, Martin would strike lucky again because he would inherit his father's pension, which was 250,000 Australian dollars. Now at this point, you know, he's inherited a small fortune and you'd be thinking that he feels rich enough. But that would not be the case. So Martin Bryant, alongside the money from Helen and the money from his father, he decides to sell the Coppin farm for 143,000 Australian dollars. Then he decides that he's going to hold on to Helen's Newtown mansion because he needs somewhere to stay. But whilst he was still at the Coppin farm, right, he used to wear white overalls, you know, looked very farm-like. But he decided to change into something a bit more pizzazzy, you know, a bit more jazzier. He wanted to look, I mean, I'd love to say he'd love to look stupid because that's what he did, but he just wanted to look a bit more fancy and upper class. So his day wear, right, he would wear a grey linen suit, cravat, lizard skin shoes, as well as a Panama hat. And he would also carry around a little briefcase during the day. And anyone he bumped into, and I mean like Tom, Dick, Harry, their dogs, anybody, he was like, oh, I'm a high-flying businessman, like, look at me in my briefcase. People knew that he was a liar. People knew he was not this high-flying businessman. They knew that he had just sponged off Helen and then got lucky when she died. Now, Martin's nightwear, that's where it gets really interesting. He starts to wear an electric blue suit with flared trousers and like a big ruffled shirt underneath it for when he would go to the restaurant that he frequented quite often. It's giving Harry and Lloyd out of Dumb and Dumber. Can you see it? I see it. Just put a top hat on, I'm giving my cane, good to go. Now, the owner of that restaurant said that everyone just stared and laughed at Martin Bryant. No one took him seriously. Like, what is he wearing? Why is he going about like that? Why does he think he's amazing when it looks like that? And then at one point, the restaurant owner, he felt quite bad for him because he was like, you know, it was very evident at a point that Martin Bryant had no friends. He was desperate to have friends, but no one wanted to be his friend because he was weird and he was killing people. Sorry, I should probably say killing people because, you know, unconfirmed, but confirmed up here. So as you can imagine, after the deaths of Helen and Maurice, Martin Bryant, he becomes very, very lonely. And we're all meant to feel bad for him, but I certainly don't because the deaths, allegedly in my opinion, I think they might have been caused by him. But he was a lot lonelier than what he usually was, and, you know, that was already quite lonely. So between 1993 and 1995, Martin Bryant, he would travel overseas 14 times, taking himself on little trips. And he said he absolutely loved the flying aspect of travelling because when he was on the planes, whoever he was sat beside, they had no option but to sit and listen to this guy talk crap, okay? They had to listen to him. They were polite. They couldn't really escape him because that's their assigned seat. He knew this. He took advantage of it. He'd talk about his business. He'd talk about all his money and, you know, his lavish life. But it was almost like he was just flying on these flights to yap to someone. Certified yapper is coming soon. And even later in Martin's life, he did say that these conversations that he would have on planes with passengers were some of the best conversations he's ever had. Yeah, because they probably didn't shut you up. So obviously, like Martin, his new hobby is flying, but he can't fly all the time, so he needs to have another hobby. And he would start collecting guns. You know, he was just stockpiling guns like there was no tomorrow. He needed something to spend his money on. Guns seemed to be the way. So after some time, Martin Bryant, he starts to say that he became very suicidal. The reason for this is because he felt like everyone was against him. No one wanted to know him. No one wanted to be his friend. If he tried to talk and communicate with people, they would just walk away. And it's like, yeah, but like, you are weird. And not just the electric blue suit, but like you have done some weird shady stuff. I wouldn't want to be your friend either. Now, it was very clear that Martin Bryant, he had really struggled with alcohol, but in particular, the 6 months prior to the Port Arthur Massacre was when it just really seemed to escalate. He was consuming half a bottle of Sambuca per day and 1 bottle of Bailey's Irish Cream. Not judging your choice of drink, but like every day, that would get sickly. I can have 1 Bailey's at Christmas and I'm like, ugh. Now, he would drink these next to some port wine and also just some other sweet drinks. Now, it would later be revealed that Martin Bryant, he had actually thought about committing the Port Arthur Massacre 4 weeks before it actually took place. And in this lead up to one of the most horrific days you will ever hear of, Martin Bryant, he was acting even stranger than usual. He was doing absolutely everything he could to get attention, and like he was just going around starting on his neighbours, like trying to pick fights and arguments with them just for something to do and to get them to notice him. So at this point, Martin Bryant is making it very known to his neighbours that he is angry, like he is furious with them. No one's noticing him, no one's taking anything to do with them. They were scared of him. For good reason. They were terrified of this man and they would hide away and they would avoid him at any cost so they didn't have to be around him. And Martin Bryant, he was so desperate for attention that he would stop at nothing, and he even said to one of his neighbours, "I'll do something to make sure you all remember me." And it's so chilling because what he goes on to do, yeah, I'm pretty sure the people of Australia and people worldwide will remember him till the day they die. Now, for this part of the case, I am just going to jump over to here in Scotland for a second because this all ties in with the Port Arthur Massacre. So I don't know if you're all aware about what happened on March the 13th of 1996 in Dunblane of Scotland, but I am going to tell you a bit about that just now because this seems to be what heavily influenced Martin Bryant. Now, where this happened in Dunblane, that is literally 20 minutes from where I live, and it's also my boyfriend's hometown. So it's really strange to think about. I mean, luckily we weren't born at that time when it took place. He was born a year later and I was born 2 years later. But it's just so scary to know that something like that can happen somewhere that you live. But basically, on the 13th of March of 1996, 43-year-old Thomas Hamilton, he would walk into Dunblane Primary School armed with guns. He proceeded to walk into the gymnasium, which is where the primary ones were getting ready for their PE class, so their physical education class, their gym class, whatever you call it where you are. I don't know how it works for grades and things like that in America and over the world, but in the UK, a primary 1 class is a class of children aged between 5 and 6 years old. When he went into this gymnasium, he murdered 16 pupils and murdered 1 teacher. He had also injured 15 more before then turning the gun on himself and taking his own life. Now, the Dunblane Massacre is probably one of the biggest tragedies that has ever taken place in British history. So when this happened, it did spread worldwide. And who heard this news but Martin Bryant? And he decided, this is what I need to do. I need to do something that is very similar to the Dunblane Massacre. And he would make sure to commit one of the most vicious, terrifying, fatal massacres that the world will ever see. So on April the 28th of 1996, Martin Bryant, he would walk into a bed and breakfast called the Seascape, and in here he would proceed to fatally shoot the owners, David and Nolene Martin. Now, Martin Bryant had stated that the reason he did this was because his father had wanted to buy this property. He wanted to make this his business, but Nolene and David, they got there first. Now, Martin Bryant also said that his father would complain on multiple different occasions about the Martins taking away his business opportunity, and they believe that the Martins did this just to spite Maurice Bryant, which, you know, I doubt that's true. Obviously, I can't say I wasn't there, but I doubt that's true. And not only was Martin convinced of all of this, but he believed that The Martin family, so David and Nolene, they were to blame for his father's suicide. Which again, this other point makes me think that maybe he didn't kill his dad. Maybe his dad did commit suicide. But I mean, ultimately, I just don't know what I think about this guy. So after Martin has murdered David and Nolene, he then proceeds to steal any weapons that they have. And he also takes the keys to a property. And this is where he would travel down to the Port Arthur site. Once he arrived at the Port Arthur site, he walked in, he ordered lunch, and he was wearing like this blue large sports bag. It's worth noting that he did enter the Port Arthur site through the historical site. So he sits down and he is eating his lunch and he's trying to make conversation with the people who are sitting around him. He talks about the fact that there's barely any wasps, and then he goes on to say that he's barely seen any Japanese tourists who would usually frequent the area. Just trying to make chit chat with these people whilst he eats his lunch, knowing what he's going to do next. Now, soon after Martin had finished eating his lunch, he moved toward the back of the cafe. He pulled out a video camera that he would set up on a vacant table. After setting up this camera, he then proceeded to pull out a Colt AR-15 semi-automatic rifle. And this is where he would just start shooting and firing at anyone in his sight, staff, customers, whoever he could see, he was firing at. Now, many of the visitors in the area, they had actually believed when these shots were first being fired, they thought it was like a historical reenactment. And it wasn't until a security guard who was working that day by the name of Ian Kingston shouted at them to run for their lives or duck down and hide. Now, just within 15 seconds, Martin Bryant, he had fired 17 shots, killed 12 people, and injured 10 others. 15 seconds. Martin had then walked to the other side of the shop. He fired 12 more shots where he had killed another 8 people and injured another 2. He then quickly changed the magazines in his gun and then he fled the scene. And just as you're hoping and praying that this horrific, terrifying ordeal is over, it wouldn't be. Because he would go into the parking lot where he would kill another 4 people and injure an additional 6 whilst he takes off in his yellow Volvo 244. So Martin, he then proceeds to drive 300 metres down the road, so not far at all, and he would spot a woman walking with her 2 children. Now, she was carrying one of these children and then the older child was walking beside her. Damn, that's a lot of blush. I wanted a lot of blush, but I don't know if I wanted that much blush. And at this point, Martin just sees this as a perfect opportunity to strike again, and he would fire 2 shots at this mother and her children, killing the mother and the child that she was carrying. Now, the older child tries to run away, tries to get away from Martin, but he tracks her down, he runs after her, and murders her as well. It's just, it'll never ever fail to amaze me and leave me in disbelief that there are people in the world who is capable of such evil. So now Martin's deciding, do you know what, they know what vehicle I'm driving, I'm better off switching over. So he steals a gold BMW 7 Series after killing all 4 people who were in that vehicle. Murdered all 4 of them and stole their car. He then drove down and it was only another short distance when he seen a couple in a white Toyota. He ordered the male who was in the car to get in the boot of the BMW, and then he proceeded to shoot and murder the female who was in the passenger seat. And honestly, when you think it can't get crazier, it does. So Martin now has a hostage in his boot of the BMW that he stole. He then decides that he's going to drive back to the Martins' guest house with the hostage. When he arrives, he sets the car on fire and then takes the hostage into the guest house where David and Nolene's corpses still remain. Now, police, they immediately know where Martin's went, so they quickly circle the property. Martin is literally firing out the window and out the doors at the police. But the police, obviously, they're worried. They don't know who's inside. They don't know if it's just a hostage in Martin, if he has other hostages, like, who knows who's in there. So they're worried about shooting in and potentially injuring an innocent person. So police negotiators, they are brought in to try and talk Martin down, like try and get him to give himself up, which, you know, is going nowhere, and this would continue until the battery in Martin's phone eventually died. Now, Martin had made a demand of being transported via helicopter to an airport. He never specified which airport, he just wanted to be taken to an airport. Oh, and the helicopter had to be an army helicopter. You know, because the guys fighting wars have nothing better to do than give you their helicopter, but okay. So as you can imagine, the hospitals at this point are heaving. They've got so many wounded people that they are trying to treat and trying to save. And the news about what's happening in Port Arthur has went worldwide at this point, widespread. And Martin Bryant, he was just refusing to surrender. And it wouldn't be until 18 hours later when Martin Bryant decided to set the guest house on fire in order to create a diversion so he could try and escape all the chaos that's going on. So he sets the guest house on fire, but what little Martin doesn't realise is he's also set himself on fire. So house is on fire, he's on fire, his clothes are burning, his body's burning, he's getting a bit, anxious because this wasn't part of the plan. Now, this is a perfect opportunity for police and firefighters to get in, extinguish him, extinguish the surroundings, and arrest his sorry ass. Now, it would be discovered once they went into the guest house that Martin Bryant, he had actually killed the hostage that he had taken to the guest house with him. The Port Arthur Massacre would have claimed the lives of 35 men, women and children. So Martin Bryant, he gets arrested, he's taken to the Royal Hobart Hospital so he can be treated for his injuries. God, honestly, if I was a nurse or a doctor, I'd be the worst, because if I knew there was a mass murderer in my midst, I would do very little to save them. Sorry. So Bryant, despite his, pleads of being insane, he was judged fit to stand trial, and he would go to trial on November the 7th of 1996. Now, originally he pled not guilty, but his court-appointed lawyer, John Avery, he was like, come on, Martin, we know you're guilty, just give up the ghost, plead guilty and you might get a better deal. So Martin, he goes ahead and he pleads guilty to all charges. And just 2 weeks later, he was given 35 life sentences plus 1,652 years in prison. And what's even better with this is that he has no possibility of parole. And I hope to God that in that prison he gets roughed up every single day, and I hope he dies a painful death. I'm not sorry. Now, for the first 8 months of his imprisonment, he was kept in a suicide prevention room. It was purpose built to prevent suicide, so it was basically complete solitary confinement he was in, so he couldn't be a danger to himself. But honestly, hap at it, I'd hand him the razor. So he would remain in the protective custody until November the 13th of 2006. That's a long time to be in protective custody, okay, but that's what happened. He was then moved into the Hobart's Wilfred Lopez Centre, which is basically a mental health facility. And this is run by the Tasmanian Department of Health and Human Services. But I have to say, this is honestly the lowest level of security. I mean, maybe not outside, but certainly inside. Inmates are free to come and go as they like from their cells. It's not like they're locked up all day. It's just a bit crazy. Free reign, really? Now, on July the 5th of 2003, another inmate had actually sprayed a cleaning solution into Martin Bryant's eyes, which, made his eyes burn. Wish it made them fall out or go on fire, but it never, but we'll take it. Then on March 25th of 2007, he tried to take his own life by cutting his wrists, but he was saved. I know, shame. And then on March the 27th, he then proceeded to try and slash his own throat. Again, trying to end his life, but he was saved again. But Martin Bryant, he is currently serving his life sentences in a maximum security prison called Risdon Prison, and this is near Hobart. And ultimately, this case would have been a lot better if it had ended with Martin Bryant dying. But hopefully he's getting mistreated in prison every single day, and I hope when his life does end that he is tortured for all eternity. Hi. Just a quick interjection from Editing Anna. I cannot believe I forgot to mention this, but these days, Martin Bryant, in prison, he is known for exchanging sexual favours in order to get chocolate off other inmates. Yeah. But moving on from that scumbag, let's bring it right back round to the people who actually matter in this case, and that is the 35 people that lost their lives to Martin Bryant in the Port Arthur Massacre. I am going to find as many names and pictures as I possibly can, and I will put them all up on screen right now. And as usual, just sending love and prayer to their families. They did not deserve what happened to them, and I cannot believe that we have sick people in this world who commit heinous, horrific, awful crimes to innocent people, ending their lives in such a brutal way. The only person's life who should have been taken away was Martin Bryant's, because this world is so much better off without him. But my loves, that is it for another true crime and makeup episode. I really hope you found this one interesting. It has been one that you've asked me to cover for such a long time, and I'm sorry I've only just got around to it, but better late than never. I hope so. As always, please make sure you engage with this video in some way, especially leaving a comment. Really helps push me out to that algorithm, which I so desperately need. The schedule is coming back into full form. I will have another video out this week for you, and then every Wednesday and Sunday after that. I know I've still been giving you one video a week, but it just feels like I've disappeared off the face of the earth, and I hate having excuses. I know you all understand because it's like a big thing that I'm trying to do just now, but it just genuinely feels like I have excuses all the time, and I hate it. I hate it so much. Don't forget that you can leave your case suggestions down below in the comments, or you can put them through on my case suggestion document, which is linked in the description. Alongside that, you will find my social media handles, so my Instagram and TikTok. I highly suggest you give me a follow over there because the festive season is quick approaching and I will be posting a lot. If you want any details of what I've used on my face today, that will all be listed down below for you as well. But that is it for today. Please, please, please remember, be a good person, do not be a bad person, stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you on Sunday. Bye!